At this point, we have spent trillions of dollars on stimulus to make sure that the economy is still somewhat functional when we come out the other end of this virus situation. So who have we helped so far with those trillions of dollars that have been spent? Well, we gave a whole lot of money to really big companies, massive companies. We gave them a lot of money. There was a tax cut put in there for the really rich, not for us, but for the really, really rich, which amounted to a massive amount of money. There's a video on that about how that's more than what we wanted for free college for everybody. Costs more than that. Just a unreported on tax cut that went straight to the rich people. Okay, we've done all that. Now the question comes about, well, are we going to start giving money to states and cities that are struggling under the pandemic? And Mitch McConnell's answer seems to be, no, we're not doing that.
I would certainly be in favor of allowing states to use the bankruptcy route. It saved some cities.
Then New York State Governor Cuomo came out and responded to Mitch McConnell by basically laying out exactly how ridiculous that concept is, right? If you're at all interested in having a functional government, a functional country, you can't let states go bankrupt. So we'll look at a number of things that he says and make sense of them and his response to Mitch McConnell. So while you're hearing all this, let's just remember, well, what's the name of this country? The United States of America. That's literally what we are, the United States. How could you sit here and let states go bankrupt if that's all we are, is a collection of states? We're literally the United States. All right, let's take a look at what Cuomo's talking about.
Small business, airlines, business program. Now some of these large corporations now apparently have been taking money from the government programs, and they're not funding state and local. When you don't fund state and local, you know who you don't fund? Police, fire, school teachers, school officials. What was the possible theory of funding large corporations but not firefighters and not police and not healthcare workers? I mean, it boggles the mind.
Yeah, so the difference here is again what we talked about earlier. The Republicans were very interested, and the Democrats played along, so they're not blameless. Everyone who pushed this forward has to share a blame in how this got spent. A lot of money got spent on huge companies. A lot of money got spent on huge corporations, and a little bit trickled down to the people, right? Normal, actual human beings are getting these tiny little checks, which are in no way even going to make things that much better for themselves. They got a tiny slice of the pie. Most of the money went to people that honestly don't really need it all that much, right? So we're looking out for corporations and companies over humans. And that's exactly what's happening here. Cuomo just lays it out. When you bail out a state, what you're really bailing out is people. You're bailing out all the employees that work for that state. You're bailing out schools. You're bailing out things that as a society, most of us have agreed really need to be functioning. And if you let those things fall, what's going to happen? Well, all of a sudden you have a bunch of teachers out of work, and you have all the city employees out of work and state employees, and you can't keep the courts running because you don't have the people that actually keep the courts moving along. But the judge is one thing, but you have all the clerks and everybody who keeps things going. How are you going to do that if you're not actually funding the states? The states need to come out of this okay.
And all they said was, don't worry, right? Don't worry, we're going to do it in the next bill. We're going to do it in the next bill. We're going to do it in the next bill. I said to our congressional delegation, I said to our senators, Schumer and Gillibrand, don't pass this past bill that they just did unless you have state and local funding, because they're not going to do it. Don't worry, they're not going to do it. As soon as the Senate acts, McConnell turns around and says, I'm not going to do it. The state should declare bankruptcy.
Okay, so this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one at all. Cuomo nails it. So what's really happening here, and this has been happening for a while, one of the reasons that the Republicans win so often is because they are willing to fight when the Democrats are sitting here trying to work together. So you can look over the past number of years. Anytime it's in the Republicans' interest to do something, then they'll slightly work together, they'll make it happen, and they'll keep telling you, your stuff's going to come later. Let's just take care of this stuff. And then as soon as they're in the position where they don't need much more, it's, no, we're done. And that's what we've done here. We've gone through a number of stimuluses for big companies and corporations and rich people with their tax cuts and all this kind of stuff. But when it got around to, okay, now we need to address state and local governments, oh no, we're done. We don't need to do that anymore. We're just going to let the states go bankrupt. And this is a valid complaint against the Democrats. They need to get tough the way the Republicans are tough. In the first stimulus, they should have been saying, nope, this isn't going forward until we give people a reasonable amount of money, like actual people, right? And this whole idea that we have to filter everything through the companies first, or, we could just give it directly to the people who need it to get through this thing, okay? Instead of saying, okay, we're going to keep giving the Republicans what they want until it's our turn, and then they're going to work with us. When has that happened in modern government? When have the Republicans worked with the Democrats, right? They're known for obstructionists. If there's a situation that they don't want to occur, they don't participate, right? From a game theory perspective, that's what you do. If every move is a losing move, you don't make a move, right? You don't play the game in the first place if every outcome is a losing outcome, right? It's like a Sun Tzu quote about, you read through, it's like The Art of War. You read through it and he's saying, look, if you're going to enter a battle that you're going to lose, you just don't go into battle. You do something else. You find some other thing to work that's going to be more advantageous to you. And this is what the Republicans do. They work together while there's something that they can gain. As soon as they have what they need, they cut everything off and say, oh, we're done working together. What you're asking for is now unreasonable. Okay, this isn't shocking to anyone who actually pays attention to the news. And Cuomo saw it coming, and yeah, I think his critique is fair that the Democrats let these bills go through that didn't actually do a good enough job meeting what the Democrats say they're trying to do for the people. Well, this is going to be judged in November, right? People are going to judge Trump on the things he did, and people are going to look back and say, well, are the Democrats really doing that much different than the Republicans? Look what came out of these stimulus packages, and there's going to be a price to pay for that.
Bail out New York. You're not bailing out New York. New York has bailed you out. Every year, it's bailed you out. Mitch McConnell is a taker, not a giver. New York is a state of givers. We put more money into the federal pot every year. We're the #1 state in donating to the federal pot. #1. Kentucky is the #3 state in taking from the federal pot. They take out more from the federal pot than they put in. Every year. But this is America. States, one federal pot, you put in what you can, and the states that need it, take it. Okay. So for every year, New York was the #1 donor state, putting in more money than it took out. Putting in more money than anyone else. And taking out less. #1 donor state. Kentucky every year was the #3 state that took out more than they put in. So they were we were putting money into the pot, they were taking our dollars out of the pot. And now he wants to look at New York and say, we're bailing you out? You're bailing us out. Just give me my money back, Senator. Just give me my money back.
Yeah, so that's pretty powerful. Just give me my money back. So here's the idea that I think it's overlooked much too often, and I'm surprised it doesn't come up more in conversations, and it's this idea of donor states and taker states. So I'm from California, another big donor state. So what happens is we pay a certain amount of money and our taxes to the federal government, but in the services that we get back, we don't get anywhere near what we've paid for. We end up paying a lot of money, and that money ends up going to pay for other states who take more than they pay, right? The problem in this situation that's being called out is that in New York, they pay way more than they get back. And McConnell is sitting there and talking about how New York is getting a bailout. And he's saying, well, then fine, just give me the money back that we overpaid that runs states like yours, helps you stay funded. Just give us that money back. You don't have to give us a bailout. Just give us back our money. So it's actually really, really potent what he's saying. So if you look at the top states, the donor states, the ones who pay more into the federal government than they get back, what you'll see is a disproportionate blue. Okay, you're going to see there's more states at the top who give away more money than they get back. And guess what you see at the other end? If you look at the states who take the most, right, who take a lot more funding from the federal government than they pay into it, guess which color you see a lot of there? Red. You see a lot of red. So basically, like as a Californian, when I go to a different state, a lot of times you get judged right away. And it's not like I'd start talking politics with strangers or anything like that. Try to be careful and respectful when you're going into other environments. But people find out you're from California. Oh, and they immediately start treating you differently, right? And it's like these other states hate us so much from California. Not everyone, but you definitely get places where when someone finds out you're from California, you get treated differently, okay? They want to scold you about the habits of California and everything that's wrong with California and how we're doing everything wrong and we're destroying the country. And you want to say, but wait a minute, I'm paying for your bad habits, right? Your economy that is falling apart in your state, we're propping that up with our habits. So you're going to scold me for how we run California, and then you're going to take our money to pay for your way, which isn't even supporting your own state. It's pretty hypocritical, and I'm actually surprised it doesn't get brought up more than it is. Cuomo is actually calling it out and saying, okay, Mitch McConnell, you're the one who's taking, you're the one who's getting a bailout.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. States should declare bankruptcy. Okay, Senator, pass the bill that authorizes states to declare bankruptcy. Sign the bill, Mr. President. Economy's coming back. We're doing great. Pent-up demand. Stock market wants to take off. Good. Pass a bill allowing states to be bankrupt. And then let's watch how the stock market takes off at that great news about our economic resilience.
So I don't see something like this getting through the House. I certainly don't see the president signing about states going bankrupt, but it wouldn't make sense anyways. You would see the economy absolutely crater, right? You would see a disaster. You would see even worse unemployment. You would see all sorts of bad stuff. And if you're the incumbent president going into the election, that is not what you want. You do not want people hurting in an economy, right? Which is probably how we got here. A lot of people think that was the whole reason we got here. Trump didn't want to mess with the economy and scare the stock market. So that's probably part of the reason we waited so long to do anything about this virus. So we waited around. He's not going to want to shake things up right now. But it's weird that McConnell is coming out and saying this. I don't know why he would even say this. Usually McConnell is extremely smart, extremely shrewd. So if he's saying this, my guess is he's got some kind of a plan figured out, and his plans tend to work, right? Not appointing judges, not appointing Supreme Court judges, not letting any bills out of the House come to the Senate. I mean, he's evil, but he does understand what he's doing, and he's a smart person, right? He's a horrible person, but he's a smart person. So I kind of have to wonder, what does Mitch McConnell have planned that's going to make all of this make sense? Because right now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Let me just go back to the self-proclaimed Grim Reaper, Senator McConnell, for another second. He represents the state of Kentucky, okay? When it comes to fairness, New York State puts much more money into the federal pot than it takes out, okay? At the end of the year, we put in to that federal pot $116 billion more than we take out, okay? His state, the state of Kentucky, takes out $148 billion more than they put in, okay? So he's a federal legislator. He's distributing the federal pot of money. New York puts in more money to the federal pot than it takes out. His state takes out more than it puts in. Senator McConnell, who's getting bailed out here? It's your state that is living on the money that we generate. Your state is getting bailed out, not my state.
Yeah, he lays it out perfectly, and this is why I wish more people understood this, right? It's this whole idea that whatever you want to call it, the thing they talk about on the right all the time. They have all these phrases they throw out there when you're trying to have a discussion. They throw these things out like redistribution of wealth. Yeah, what we're talking about right here is a redistribution of wealth. You're taking wealth from blue states and you're giving it to the red states. And like I mentioned earlier, there's usually some shaming along the way. Shaming New York, shaming California, telling us how ridiculous we are while we give all this money to the country. And then these red states have to go ask for money so that they can support their own state and barely get by. Right? Maybe the things that we're doing in the blue states that make all this money, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's something to that. Instead of just getting hung up on, well, that's a redistribution of wealth. Yeah, this is a redistribution of wealth, and then you're ungrateful for it, right? You could also call it socialism, right? You're taking money. That's what you always hear the right calling everything socialism. What are we doing here? We're taking money from someone, and the government is giving it to someone else. But you're doing it as an entire state, as a whole state, okay? So perhaps we need an honest view of what's actually happening with the economics in the states. The very people who are yelling about redistribution of wealth, who are yelling about socialism, need to understand what's actually propping them up, what's actually paying for things. All right, thanks for watching. Please subscribe so you can check out all the new content as it becomes available, and we'll see you next time.